whether they are in Johannesburg, South Africa, Nairobi, Kenya, Accra, Ghana, New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, or Memphis, Tennessee, the cry is always the same: we want to be free.
Those were the words delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 53 years ago. Good afternoon and welcome. It is so good to see all of you, for me for the first time. And that's our show. Thanks very much. My name's Gary Stoppelman, and I am the Executive Director of the Dubuque Museum of Art. Thank you for joining us. I am grateful to see all of you today. In his speech, Dr. King prophetically pleaded with his audience to carry his vision forward. He reminded them of our shared humanity. The question is not, he said, if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? The contemporary parallels in the speech are shocking. He called out corporations like Coca-Cola, today a target on the other side of the aisle. Dr. King challenged his listeners to support black-owned businesses and implored them not to let moments of looting distract from the conditions that led to the violence. People ask me, why is the museum doing this? Our mission is to excite, engage, and serve our diverse community by connecting generations of people to their cultural heritage and exceptional art. It's what we do. So, before we talk about an exceptional exhibition, I wanted to ground us in the facts that led up to the I Am a Man March. On February 1st, Ethel Cole and Robert Walker, two Memphis sanitation workers, were accidentally crushed to death by the compactor of their garbage truck. Cole and Walker's deaths sparked a strike by the city's workers who were struggling to survive poverty wages and unsafe working conditions. Despite King's efforts, events turned violent. Rioters looted stores, the police shot a 16-year-old, and tear-gassed a church. On April 3rd, Dr. King delivered his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech. He called for unity and peaceful action. The choice, he said, was between nonviolence and non-existence. On April 4, he was assassinated. On April 8th, the I Am a Man March, originally scheduled in support of the sanitation workers, became a memorial for Dr. King. 42,000 people marched in total silence behind his widow, Coretta Scott King. Our exhibition site also echoes with voices from history. Before the Telegraph Herald, the intersection of Bluff and 8th Streets was the site of the Lorimer Hotel, where the Dubuque Museum of Art was established in 1874. Across the street was the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which served a small black neighborhood up the street. I acknowledge the museum still has a long way to go on our journey towards a more equitable future. I'm excited to learn from the artists that we'll hear from today and from all of you. This is a work that will continue to speak to us long after the eventual deconstruction of that building. I want to thank our partners, Voices Productions, Trappist Caskets, and Humanities Iowa, who made I Am a Man possible. So, without further ado, please help me welcome Stacy, Dana, and Fate.
Thanks, Gary. Hello, everyone. I am Stacy Peterson, Curator and Registrar at the Dubuque Museum of Art. Thank you all for joining us today in our first in-person in the museum event in over a year. Thank you also to those who are joining us online. We are live streaming right now, so let your friends know. Shout it out on social media, let them know to join us for this conversation with Dana Harrison and As Fate Would Have It, the artist of the highly anticipated mural titled I Am a Man. Our conversation today will last for about an hour, including time for questions at the end. So the museum is really very fortunate to be able to host such an important mural for everyone to see. And I'm very happy and incredibly honored to be sitting here with the two artists who are making this all happen. A little bit about them. Dana, also known as Lim One, is a Jefferson, Iowa artist who started writing graffiti in 1996 in his hometown of Fort Dodge, Iowa. Dana studied under the late Sadsko from Hamburg, Germany. Besides his graffiti writing, Dana is also well known for his drawings and paintings and really very cool custom car painting. With almost 25 years of mural experience, Dana's most recent mural can be found on the Market House in Iowa City. Also, the next time you're in Des Moines, be sure to check out his murals on the Edna Griffin Building, the 10th Street Bridge, and Platinum Cuts. Fate, that's Fate, is a Des Moines-based graffiti writer with over 14 years of experience creating murals in the Midwest, the Southwest, and the West Coast. He has organized large graffiti exhibitions in Des Moines as well as workshops for young people. Fate hosts a really great podcast, a really energetic podcast called Worst Things First. So check that out. He's also a hip hop recording artist associated with Maxilla Blue, an American hip hop trio. Both artists are members of the nationally recognized Scarce Elements crew, a graffiti-based mural crew, and they have worked together on many murals. Dana and Fate, thank you for being with me here today.
Thank you.
All right, so the first thing I'm curious about is not only how you became artists, but how long have you known each other, and how long have you worked together?
20 years,
Yeah.
probably. We've known each other for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Cross paths about 15 with art, I would say.
Yeah.
12,
Yeah.
15 years.
And then officially putting Dana down with the crew. I've been down with Scarce Elements crew since 2013. Dana, what were you, about 5 years ago?
Yeah, I would say 5.
Yeah. So to put it in perspective, this is somebody that I met around senior year of high school. I moved to Des Moines from Indianapolis, Indiana. Dana was already at the time involved in vandalism, creative vandalism. And I took a liking to it, but I never actually got started until years and years later. And the funny thing is, I ended up getting put down in a real large crew, which is, something of an event for you, an accomplishment. And as soon as Dana and I crossed paths again about 5 years ago, to me, it had to be done. He lives art, he breathes art. I like to do what I want to do. And so to me, it only made sense that someone like him get the opportunity to be a part of something big like that as well.
And it's strange because it kind of went full circle. I contacted him through social media, through him being a lyricist, and I didn't even know it was him. And he said, "Do you know who this is?" I said, "No." And then he seen my artwork, and then after that, it just connected again.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Really? So tell us about being in a crew. I mean, what does that mean if you're not familiar, for someone that's not familiar with that?
Generally discipline, structure. It could also provide sort of guidelines or an outline for how to approach the craft. It's funny you bring this up. I don't want to be a stick in the mud on this, but so I did a couple of days ago, I had a virtual speaking event similar to this one, and we were talking about some of the tenets of graffiti, right? And as a graffiti writer, one of those disciplinary tenets that I talk about when I said structure and discipline has to do with going freehand, right? So I remember one time I had a whole bunch of graffiti writers at my house. I'm working in my sketchbook. Everyone's working in their sketchbook. I'm doing what's called a straight letter, which essentially is just a block letter font, right? And I go to pull out a ruler to make sure that my first letter and my last letter are relatively even across the page. And I'll never forget one of the older mentors of the crew saying, "What are you doing? You can't pull a ruler or a meter stick out at a rail yard. You can't pull that out when you hear the twig snap and it's nighttime and the moonlight's on you. So you better be able to pull a straight line without doing that," right? Well, that's what a crew provides, right? So the funny thing is, Dana hits me up and he's like, "Man, they want us to use a projector." And I'm like, "A projector? I can't tell anybody about this." But that's what a crew does, I think. It provides some structure, some guideline, it keeps you in check. There's accountability that comes from it, and it pushes you as well. You know, it's easy for all of us being human to regress a bit or get complacent, but with a crew, you're not allowed to do that as much. So
Is there a style that you see in certain crews, or does everybody still keep their own style?
If someone right now were to go and look up scarce elements, that's SCARCE, elements is spelled with a Z on the end of it, or look up the Scarce Collective. I'm not doing this as part of an exercise to participate in. I'm just saying if you were to do that, you would notice that to some degree our aesthetic includes like a dreamy, ephemeral, atmospheric sort of vibe to it. So in our case, yes, I do think once we're really allowed to flex and get loose with a lot of colors, you do seem to almost get a surreal, dream-like vibe from a lot of our work.
Yeah, almost psychedelic, you know. The crew also, it's like a family too, you know, we're like all brothers.
Yeah.
We can depend on each other for whatever.
That's awesome. Did you grow up wanting to be artists?
I just always kind of gravitated towards art. I always loved it. Started drawing, and then about 13 years old, I just started with letters and practiced the craft of writing letters.
I didn't consider myself particularly artistic until relatively recently. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, I would draw characters from video games, or I would take DVD or VHS covers and try to recreate what was on that. But for the most part, I was just always drawing from a reference, right? The one art that I really was kind of into was graffiti writing, but I didn't have anyone to kind of put me onto that until I made it to Iowa. And once that happened, I fell in love with letter form, which is at the root or the basis. It's a fundamental part of our craft, and it's why you hear us distinguish ourselves from street artists. Some graffiti writers even take offense to being called a street artist, because it's just not the same thing. You should have a love for letter form. You should be in love with the anatomy of letters and understand that the spine of a K in a particular font or alphabet should resemble the spine of the B in that same alphabet. If you don't do that and you break your letter form and your graffiti style, it's looked at as faux pas within our culture. So I was into that sort of thing, like a more esoteric knowledge that you gotta find, you know, late nights, black book sessions, being in the train yards and that sort of thing. That kind of art drew me.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that you came to Iowa and discovered graffiti writing.
Yeah. 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 You know.
So let's talk about the creation process. You had originally planned to start the mural last night, but due to the weather, you'll be starting the projection tonight. And that's really the first step in creating the mural. So would you explain the mural creation process to us, and will the process for this mural be different from other murals?
Well, yeah, with the projector, it's going to be a little different. Using that, it's going to make everything go a lot quicker. We just hardline the outline and then pack in the color, fill it. Most of the time, we'll just go off the top of the head and create something organically. But with shorter time frames and more precise imagery like this, it really helps and can speed up the process and make everything crisp.
What kind of materials are you using?
I would say 90% spray paint, all aerosol usually. When we have like big block colors, we'll roll that and then come back with paint and smooth it out and make everything look nice.
Usually some form of like a UV resistant exterior paint, just in case someone's looking to go, you know, find the right sort of thing.
All right, so let's step back from the creating the mural, the painting the mural. How did you get involved in the mural project?
This one in particular, Voices reached out to me, the good people over there, and they like my previous work that I've done, and seen some of the crew's work, and they just got it going, got everything rolling, and they done a bunch of work around here that I was kind of unaware of, really, and then I got here and just, it's really great to see all the murals and what they're doing, so thanks to them, this is happening.
Then with the image choice, that's all part of creating the mural, how was the I Am the Man image, which is a photograph taken by Bob Adelman in 1968, how was that chosen for this mural? And Dana, if you would also talk about your decisions in the design.
Yeah, we came up with that together also, Voices and I, and the rest of the protests behind it, we kind of just wanted the singular image up front, more of a individual statement, I guess. So.
Right, so you pull the man with the
Yep.
sign out, and then look like you're at a drop shadow?
Yeah, the
to
drop
that?
shadow, so it's just a singular image rather than the entire.
Rather than reproducing the photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's going to be a little stronger that way and step out a little more.
And then, so Fate, you mentioned the UV paint, and despite, including the fact that the building is temporary, you're both well aware of the effects of weather and sun on the lifespan of your work. So how do you feel about the impermanence of your work? And is this the first mural that you've planned on, the first planned mural on a temporary building?
No, and I think that's actually, being a graffiti writer prepares you most for that thing that you just stated. So, you know, sometimes you're out painting at night and you're painting on a train or a boxcar, and another train pulls up. And now, because it's pulled up on the next track and it's so close to your back, you no longer can go 10 to 15 feet back from the train to make sure everything looks proportional, right? And so you have to make a decision that night, you know. Do you wait to see if possibly this train pulls out? That's a risk to take because the train you were just painting may pull out, you know? Sometimes we'll paint something and we want to get a daytime flick of it. So we come back the next day and that train car is gone. You know, we didn't know the schedule. I would not recommend this to anyone, but there was an instance where a train tried to pull out on me and I had put so much time in it, I just wasn't having it. So I jumped on that train and I ended up 6 miles outside of town. But I finished my piece though. And that's the type of thing a crew would hold you to. Did you finish your piece? See what I'm saying? So that helps you. The transient nature of our art helps you. People always ask that sometimes, like, you know, are you guys gonna be pissed when they paint over your mural a year or two from now? Not at all. I feel like I got away with the robbery once I'm done. You know, once I'm done and I'm out of there, man, it's we're good to go.
I've also been in an incident where I've painted till about sunrise overnight, and like you said, you want to go get a picture during the daytime, you know, full effect, and you come back and it's been buffed an hour later. Like sunrise, hour later, I come back. I went and grabbed some breakfast, came back, it was gone already. So it's usually temporary, so we're used to that.
So when you said buffed, that means somebody came
Yeah,
along
buff, like they'll just either water blast it or paint right over it with the existing color.
And Des Moines has a particular, we call it a vicious buff, which just means the turnaround on them getting stuff buffed is quicker than other cities. Some cities, your stuff may ride 7 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, before someone gets tired enough to make a complaint and it's covered up. Downtown Des Moines, I did something I was going to be really proud of. And I got up the next day at 5 a.m. so I could make it downtown. I didn't even have to be at work until 8:30. But I got up at 5 just to make sure I could see the artwork from the previous night. And the Vandal Squad was already down there taking pictures and they were already buffing it up. And yeah, it hurt my heart. I didn't know this was even gonna be an emotional thing that we're doing here today. That one did hurt a little bit, you know.
Do you figure out the areas where that will happen more quickly, and so you try to go to areas where maybe they'll last a little longer? Or do you think about that?
Can I answer this? Hey, this is actually a great question, because a lot of times you hear people who are fans of murals not be fans of the foundational techniques that get us to being able to do murals. And so what I'm referring to are things like tags, throw-ups, what we call bubble styles, usually 1 or 2 colors or someone's signature done over and over and over again, right? A lot of people, we don't like seeing that on bathroom stalls and that sort of thing, but we love seeing the great big mural that artist may have grown and progressed to being able to do. What people don't understand that are outside of the culture is, for us, there are designated places or proper places to put certain forms of graffiti. So your tag, because it's a representation of your persona, and basically it essentially says, I existed today. Wherever you see my tag up, that means today I lived, right? So your tag you put up in as many places as you possibly can. Throw-ups or bubble styles are something that they have to be done very quickly. Usually they're done in under like a minute or 2 minutes, depending on how many letters you have in your name. It's customary for us to try to find high traffic areas to do that in. That's what's appropriate. If you go and you do a bubble style under a bridge, a more experienced graffiti writer is gonna say, oh, you were practicing? You know?
Yeah.
So there are designated areas to do certain things, and yes, the higher the traffic, the more it's what we call ups, which is like another form of saying like respect or props, you know. The more up you are, the more danger that was involved, or the more likely it was that someone was gonna see you, then the greater respect you get depending on the degree of intricacy for what you did there. So if you do a full color burner, as we call it, or mural that's illegal and it's in a high traffic area, that's the pinnacle. That's the best you could ever do. Because most people would expect you to just get in and get out and do a bubble style or do a tag like you do in a bathroom stall. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so I want to touch more on location, but you, Fate, you also bring up about the danger of being a graffiti writer, an artist, a graffiti artist too. So, you know, the heights, working from heights, working in railroad stations, that's part of the culture. The danger of it, is that something you think about? Does that draw people to it?
It definitely draws people to it, some more than others. One thing I'm starting to do, and I think it is important to do, is I'm progressing, or I'm evolving to being more inclusive of my mindset in terms of how someone should or could get started doing graffiti. There used to be a time frame where, to me, it made no sense to ever like teach a class or a workshop. It didn't seem organic. I don't want to take care of some soccer mom's kid just because she doesn't want to deal with him from 3 to 4. And he doesn't really want to be there learning anyway, right? You want someone who's going to be diligent, who's going to try, and who's going to care, and all that sort of thing. So I was always adverse to that whole idea. And I remember going to Denver. I got invited to paint at Colorado Crush, which is one of the bigger events here in the Midwest. And I remember looking around because there was sort of a local issue going on. There was some static because some people didn't have respect for the organizer of the event because apparently his history was working in his bedroom, doing canvas work, learning in the classroom environment. And so a lot of the traditional graffiti writers in the city basically felt like, well, why is that person who didn't risk the danger and didn't go through the type of stuff we went through, why is this person dictating who gets to paint at the largest graffiti festival in the city, right? And I actually used to think along those lines. But I'll never forget, I was just painting there one day, and I looked around and I started seeing kids that were like 6, 7 years younger than me, but were doing all these techniques that I couldn't do. And I knew even if they showed me how, it would take me some time to figure it out, right? And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, would I rather be able to chastise the upcoming generation because they didn't learn the craft the same way we did, or would I rather Des Moines or Iowa be full of as many artists as I'm seeing around me right now? And in that moment, I was like, I told myself to shut up, and I started teaching workshops the next year. You know what I'm saying? Because it was more about proliferating the art. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with someone taking a smarter, wiser route to getting there, you know? So.
For sure. Well, sticking with location then, with the I Am the Man mural, in that particular location, at this particular moment in history, there's a lot of layers to be uncovered. But as it relates to location, Dana, I'm thinking of your murals on the Edna Griffin Building and the Pleasant Valley, Iowa mural, even the Drake Neighborhood Transit murals in Des Moines. Can you speak to the importance of location in your work?
Location's always key. I mean, illegal or legal. The bigger the spot, the better for me. I mean, what would you say?
I don't
The
disagree.
top to bottom. My goal is to get murals as big as I can, top to bottom. That's always my goal, no matter where I'm at, whether it be the train yard or anywhere.
What about, especially with the Edna Griffin Building and the Pleasant Valley, Iowa murals, it seemed like you did a lot of research on those to make them pertinent to the place?
Well, yeah, Pleasant Valley, that's kind of our old stomping grounds, close to our heart. So I knew that was a special one, and we kind of had to relate the whole neighborhood on the one mural, which was kind of tough because you have to add a lot of things, but it worked out great, and the community liked it. So, which I was kind of nervous about. I didn't know how they were going to receive it.
Yeah.
It was good.
Good, awesome. So let's talk about the meaning of the image. The image in this mural carries many meanings. For instance, mourning and loss, racism and violence, protest and bravery, dignity and independence. So personally, what does this mural mean to each of you?
To me, it's more of a equal rights, and I like artwork like this in particular because everyone's gonna have a different opinion how they take it, but it's for sure gonna make you feel a certain way. Lots of murals are just like beautiful, they make you feel good, but I like painting things that make you think a little more and maybe feel a little different way,
Right.
whether it be good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is monumental. I just the timing, as you mentioned, in history, but it feels like just a snapshot of a sad reality. The reiteration of a dark message we've heard before.
Which is kind of crazy 50 years later, and we're still putting it up.
So I mean, so think about it. The sign that the sanitation workers were holding says, "I am a man." So we're still at a point where someone has to go out of their way to stress what should be obvious in order to get what probably justifiably should be coming to them. Now, I don't want to get into the politics of the Chauvin trial, but just think about it. There's that parallel to it. The statement, the obvious thing is happening, and it's still being questioned. We're watching a trial to determine if someone killed a dude after watching a video of the dude killing the dude. You know what I'm saying? It's like a man having to stand in front of you and say to you, "Oh, by the way, I'm a man."
All right.
You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Dana, I like what you said about the Pleasant Valley mural, where you hope people would like it. Do you, when you're making murals, do you think about the community and the conversations that people might have about it?
Depending on the mural, I guess. That one I did in particular because, it meant a lot to me because I kind of grew up down there, hanging out down there, here and there. And, just to see how they responded, no vandalism or nothing. That's what they expected, actually. No one has touched it since, so I'm pretty proud of that.
And then, Faye, what you're saying is, stating the obvious and stating it over again and again and again. With this mural or any mural, do you think murals can change the way people think about things?
Yes. You know how like a lot of messages in life, regardless of who they come from, it could be the first good boss you had. It could be the one auntie out of your family that you like. It could be your parents. Sometimes it's years later or it's a long time later that the message has been reiterated by several different parties, and in one instance, it was enough to click for you. whether that had other variables included, like circumstance of life that you were going through, maybe, you know, something else that just happened. For whatever reason, quite often a message that has been conveyed to us over and over and over and over and over again, we finally get it somewhere down the line. So the way I look at it is like any mural is one of those instances of yet again conveying that message. And hopefully it clicks for somebody then, while it may take longer and the message may have to be reiterated by another party from another angle for someone else to get it differently. But yeah, I think it could change the way people look at things.
And because this mural is temporary, it kind of puts the pressure on us to carry its message forward. You know, once it's not always going to be there to remind us to remember the struggles of the past, to remember to respect each other and to be kind. So it's here, it will be here for now, but we have to carry its message forward. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say as we wrap up and before we go to questions?
I don't think so. We'll be
I'm
off the
pretty
rails. We'll be off the rails.
Well, before we go to questions, I want to hear about what your next projects are, and I'd like you to tell people how they can follow your work.
The main thing I'm focused on next is putting out a graffiti magazine for the state of Iowa. Some people are aware that I'm involved in music. I just released my 5th vinyl LP recently, but the more pertinent thing to this conversation where that is concerned is we created a lyric book, and the lyric book has artwork from our crewmates and a lot of different graph pieces, both sanctioned and illegal, in sort of a magazine form. And what I really want to do is create that en masse for all of the writers in the state. Back in 2008 or so, I created a 124-page hardbound cover book, but I was doing it through like one of those keepsake sites like Snapfish or something like that. Totally ineffective cost-wise. You can't produce that on a mass scale. But this year it clicked, and I figured out how to do things on a smaller incremental scale, and that would be in the form of a magazine. And so I really want to get that rolling, something that puts the graffiti writers on the spotlight. And it doesn't matter, rival crews or not, whether we get along or not. If your work is up, you earned it.
Myself, right now I've been putting in a lot of work on car works. I'm building a 54 Suburban, stuff like that. Not a lot of murals though, not right now.
So in Fort Dodge, what is it? APHIS, Athletes for Education and Success. There's a facility there. In a nutshell, it basically assists with like after-school programming and grooming athletes for a balance between education and athletics and stuff, right? So they get scholarships for kids and all that sort of stuff. Well, last year, the facilitator of that, Chuck Clayton, asked us to come and put black superheroes throughout the school. It's a repurposed elementary school. This is the coolest thing. It's a repurposed elementary school that they use for this little after-school facility, right? So imagine like we're doing pieces and characters like over lockers or in like a scene that looks like it's straight out of Saved by the Bell, So last year we did like Storm, we did Nick Fury, we did Black Panther, we did Yuri, Black Panther's sister, Mr. Terrific, Bumblebee, and a few others. And so we're going back this summer to add more superheroes, black superheroes throughout that school.
Your crew is doing that?
Yes, ma'am. And since Dana's local here, it'll probably be me and him. We sort of like all come together on bigger things, whether it's here in Des Moines or in Phoenix, which is another like home base of ours. But generally, if it's taking place in Iowa and it's scarce elements, it's me and this cat rocking.
All right, so how about we open it up for questions from the audience, and we have a microphone, so you have to ask your question on the microphone so that people online can hear your question too. So does anybody want to start?
Could we do it by sections?
It depends on if we have questions. Yeah, there's a couple in the back, Margie. And Margaret, our Director of Education, has the microphone, so she'll be around.
So be nice to me.
Hey, how's it going? First of all, thank you guys for coming here and putting that mural on the building. It really will spark some great conversation throughout the community and the direction that we're going to make this a place, an equitable community. But a question I have, this is a high traffic area and you guys actually inspired me. I would like to stay, you know, uplifted like you guys and put my name somewhere on this building. So where would you put your name on this building if you could, so I can do the same thing? And why?
Well, we certainly wouldn't discuss it in front of a room full of people before doing it. So I'd say holler at us afterwards. We'll talk later.
Hey, we'll look for that on Monday or Tuesday. Margie, I think Louise had a question.
So considering questions of equity, are there women on your crew or are there women-led crews?
There are very few women-led crews. I can only think of one off the top of my head. I had a young student, a prodigy, and she ended up going off to the military, who was really, really good, and we were taking her around, traveling to Phoenix and painting with our crew. And my hope was to actually induct her into the crew, but I think she wanted to create her own path, create her own crew. And so, you know that whole saying about don't pick the petals off of a flower, let it be and let it continue to exist. You can't steal that beauty for yourself because you'll kill it. You know that I paraphrase, but you know where I'm going with the thing. It was that sort of thing. And so I just had to let her do her thing. Otherwise, it would have probably been the first female within our crew. At the graffiti exhibition that we held for several years called Color Codes, we did, as much as we could, make sure to include female writers, though, and that started to grow as time went on. So as the years progressed, we had more and more female participants, and that was something that was really important to me, because some of my students were females.
I also have a 11-year-old daughter that is starting to get into writing, so maybe in the future.
Hi, yeah, you mentioned rival crews. I was wondering if you could just provide some insight on like that end of the business and what makes your crew, Scarce Elements, like unique. You know, why are some crews different from others?
You know, much like individuals, crews have different values. There's a really famous crew out on the West Coast, TKO, True Kings Only, ran by a dude known as Toomer. And Toomer will outright tell you, our crew is a crew of criminals who just so happen to be artistic. So if there's static between us and your crew, expect it to go the criminal route. That is their mantra. They live by that. They push that, right? We're not so much on that. We're more so we want to get the job done. We want to get the work done. We want to put up as much work as possible. When you talk about crews in the context that you're referring to, we need to clarify that Scarce Elements really doesn't fall into that conversation, because Scarce Elements is our legal above ground mural conglomerate. You know what I mean? So if Asphalt does a mural somewhere in the city, it'll only be on legal surfaces in the city or throughout the U.S. Scarce Elements only does legal stuff throughout the U.S. or throughout the city and that sort of thing. What I write on freight trains isn't the same name that has been spoken here today, and I wouldn't reveal it, just like we wouldn't talk about putting the stuff on the wall right before doing it, right?
And say rivalry, like as far as say a Scarce does a mural, like a production piece, and then a rivalry crewmate or just anyone can come and cap on it, which is when they just come over and write their name on top of something. That's really just a throw up or a tag even, and that can start rivalries.
But generally, when you're at a certain level and you've made a distinction between your underground work and, like I said, this above ground stuff, you don't run into that. So to put it in a nutshell for you, our crew Scarce Elements that we've spoken about today, we don't have rivals. That's not the context in which they exist. Now, where they would exist is As you're coming up and progressing and getting good at crafting and honing your craft, and you're painting out in train yards, or you're painting under bridges, and then the next time you go down to that bridge because it seemed like a real chill spot, and now you've told your homie that y'all can go back there and spend 6 hours and do something monumental y'all have never done before, and you do that. But when you return down there, there's a different graffiti writer that's decided to write their stuff over your name. That's beef, that's static. And so now the tenets of the culture would call for you to top it. That's where the values are different. The crew I described earlier out west, Toomer's crew, TKO, they want to find you and they want to get physical with you. Me, I want to now put something up on the wall that I know you can't top. And technically there's a rule within our culture that says that's how it's supposed to rock. You know, if I do a tag, you can't do a tag over it. You can do a throw up over it because that's the next level up. If someone does a bubble style or throw up and then I do a full color piece, that's proper because it's the next level up. Once you start getting to the most intricate and most complex form of style, now it just comes down to, is your shit better than that other person's? And if it's not, you shouldn't be touching it.
And that's how it
You shouldn't
progresses.
touch
That's
it.
how you get better too.
Right.
So
But
it's
this-
always good to kind of have a little rivalry. With
It is, because it pushes you.
Yeah.
It pushes you.
Even
you
a
know.
friend, like you push each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, the beef thing doesn't really exist in
Around, yeah.
in this context.
So why is the I Am a Man mural temporary? I heard that a lot today, that it was temporary and it won't be up for a while. Why is that?
Well, the building itself is a temporary building, and it's on the campus of the museum, just on the opposite corner, and it used to house the radio building. It used to be the radio building. They've since moved up by Loris College, I think, and so it's an abandoned building, and it was purchased with the intent of tearing it down at some point. So, you know, I spoke with Dana, and everybody, Voices, the museum, everybody knew that this would be a temporary building. And I think that we kind of wanted to take advantage of the fact that it is, and use it as a space where we can host something like this and start a conversation. But we made very clear with Dana ahead of time that it was
that is a
temporary,
good
so he
question,
knew.
though. I would be willing to do a canvas piece and donate it to the museum. That way, you know.
That would be awesome.
You know what's crazy? As we closed out the formal section prior to the Q&A starting, I was thinking that, like, it has to be temporary. You know, it's the degree of attention that we pay on any one of these cases from people dying is temporary. There's gonna be another one after George Floyd, you know. There already has been, you know, there are many prior to that. And right as you were closing that out, you were mentioning that, I got hit in the chest, and I didn't say anything. That's why I said I don't wanna, let's not keep going because we're going off the rails, is because I had just been overcome with thinking about, like, the fact that, no, this does need to be up, and then it's gone. Just like another person said, they were a man, and it was acknowledged for a bit, and then it was gone. And now we talk about it as history, but it doesn't mean it solved the problem. So now another person's dead, we talk about it, there's a trial, we get our hopes up, it's adjudicated in whatever fashion, and then it's gone, and there's another one. So I almost feel like there's inevitability to the need for it to be, it has to be temporary to continue to illustrate this pattern. Like, that's just the way it is, you know.
Right, and you think about the man who said, I've seen the mountaintop, I've been to the mountaintop, and the next day, he was gone, you know?
Right.
Another question?
Why do you love doing, like, your art? Do you ever have, like, a reason that you do it? Like,
I just have a passion for it. It just never gets old. I love it. I mean, I'll always be painting.
There's something that I tell all of my students, which is every time we go to paint on the wall, I want you to try something you've never done before. It doesn't matter if it's doubling an outline where previously you might have done a single line. It doesn't matter if it's trying a different color, a fade technique, holding the can differently so that the cone of spray emits in a different way and the paint falls differently on the surface. Whatever it is, I want you to set out to try something different, and that's every time out, right? And with us, we go that hard on the stakes because of all the stuff I was describing earlier. Train pulling out on you, you know, the bulls, which is what we refer to as rail cops. Them showing up, you know, the flashlights start shining down the track, you gotta hide for half an hour, you know, before you start painting again and all that sort of thing. It's because those stakes are so high and you may not get to finish your piece that we care so much and we go so hard on that stuff, right? So that graph writer mentality for me really helps because when it comes to working with students, I kind of push a similar line and I push the whole mindset of try something different every time you step to the wall. And the reason you do that is this. If you actually achieve it and you execute what you tried to do, then you over time develop this pattern of just being able to do something you didn't know you could do prior to trying it. And so now that just becomes part of like who you are. You know what I mean? Your confidence is different. When someone says, hey, do you think you can pull that off? Or can you try this? It doesn't even have to be related to graffiti. Someone may be more likely to be like, yeah, and I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. Because I always have to, because every time I go to the wall, I have to. See what I'm saying? So I like that. I notice kids coming away with a different sort of vibe to them. And I remember one day sitting down with one of them and they were talking about like, dude, I feel like I can do anything. Because I'll talk about doing a particular thing. I won't know how to do it. You and me will talk. I'll go to the wall. Next thing I know, it's up there. They get a picture and they now prove to themselves. They can look every day, every night and be like, damn, I did that thing. And earlier that day, I didn't even know how the hell to do that thing. Do that 50 times and see how much you doubt yourself. You know?
Why did you decide to do this specific photo?
We worked with Voices on this one. I feel like right now it needs to be heard and seen, and you know, it's a strong image.
Yeah. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Sometimes he's like.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Just a follow-up to the photo. Did you have to get licensing rights or anything to do this from the state or photographer? Or?
I believe we did. I don't know who it was, but yeah, we did get the rights to paint it.
Yeah, the Bob Adelman estate
Okay.
gave us rights to use the image.
Cool.
That's dope.
So I live in Bellevue, where the rail cars go north and south all the way through the town, and it's like a
gallery.
It's taken it to a whole nother level, guerrilla art. And I guess my question about this is, I've always enjoyed it. I can't always read it. And I get the feeling that different crews have different signature style of the way they make their letters. What I really wonder about is it more important to have the feel of the image or to get the word across?
That's a great question. Technically, from a graffiti writing standpoint, what I would refer to as a literate graffiti writer, meaning someone who can read those tougher styles, they should be able to recognize some consistency in your letter form, all right? You can make up any kind of alphabet you want, but again, as we talked about earlier, the anatomy of one letter reflects or resembles another within an alphabet, you know. That's why a K spine sits straight up and a B spine sits straight up and a P spine sits straight up. Within that same alphabet, you wouldn't have the spine of a P angle like this, but you could create a whole new font or alphabet with that being the equation of the spine, right? So for a graffiti writer, as long as your name doesn't do what we call breaking your letter form, then you can do what you want. Then you're able to make up rules. You're able to hide things, camouflage the piece, make it look like something totally different, make it look like an animal, you know, make it be more about the feel and the flow, as you mentioned. But you must have proper letter form first. And the thing about letter form is, from the first letter you put down, you are the actual creator of that. So you are creating your own rules, and we get to watch and see, do you break your own rules?
So is it most often the writer's name?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
And
sir.
how close are you? Do you ever walk the trains?
Oh, I can sit there and watch the whole thing go by.
Because they go right up the street
Well,
that people live on.
There's a gentleman. He goes by the Texas Rambler, and he just does monikers with wax or chalk, and he gets up more than anyone. If you walk him right now, you'll see at least 10 or 20 of them, and he's probably what, late 70s, maybe 80.
Yeah.
He still writes moniker probably every day. If you see 10 trains, he's on 6 of them.
A wax chalk?
A
Like
wax?
pastel?
It's an oil pen. It's like a real oil pen. And that's a good point to bring up, because you were talking about crews earlier and people having like different values and that sort of thing. So in the street crew that I came up in before Scarce Elements, you're required to be able to have dope tags, dope throw-ups, dope straight letters, dope cursive styles. Then you can get into wild styles, as we call them, or things that are a little bit tougher to read. New York funk, futuristic funk, all that sort of stuff. Hiding your letters, incorporating sacred geometry into the stuff that you're doing, making symmetry be a foundational point of the thing that you're creating. All of that you have to do all of that. In Scarce Elements, we have to go one level up and also be able to do characters, portraits, and that sort of thing, right? There are some crews and some graffiti writers that they despise that. They despise the level of doing murals and that sort of thing. You hear them say things like, well, go get a graffiti coloring book if you want to do that. Some are more on the end of the spectrum where they just want their name up everywhere. They want everybody to know they were there. They want to destroy, 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 destroy. That's how we term it, right? So depending on where you fall on the spectrum, you may specialize in or really be all about tagging, or really be all about hitting as many billboards in the city as you can as possible, or really about doing murals and progressing to commission work. What Dana was just referring to is a whole nother subculture of that subculture, which is referred to as hobo writing. And so there are people who ride, we have the largest hobo exhibition or whatever here in our state, but there are people who ride the trains all the time, and they keep an oil grease marker on them, like the Texas Rambler, and they'll just go do a simple one-line moniker. And you'll see that everywhere. And when we as graffiti writers see that, even though we paint with spray paint and it's a little bit different, we honor those because those are like the elder Charlie Chaplin, like OGs to what we do. You know what I'm saying? But I did want to touch on the fact that that's a whole little subsection of our subculture.
And they're up on all the cars if you look closely. You can't see it from a distance and it's not so colorful, but if you walk the trains, you'll see them, especially the Texas Rambler.
You've been thinking about getting involved with something. Yeah, I see it.
I just want to thank you guys for doing this. And basically, the way I see it is, this particular picture is something that's monumental, and it's basically an opportunity for the city of Dubuque to be innovative and basically putting truth to power. And so I would like to know if it's possible that the museum could be innovative with these artists and give them an opportunity to be creative with a thought process of creating some tangible action steps beyond just the moment to create a movement of change. Because I think like when somebody see that, it will spark their conscious awareness of something. But how could we put them to, what are you willing to do now?
Yeah, that's how we continue this after the mural is gone, after the mural's up. You know, that's the kind of, depending on their willingness and what we can do, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we need to keep moving forward.
You know how like sometimes you discover like there's always like little bits of progress in everything? Like, I don't know, man, you know. Sometimes it's tough to articulate what's going on in this head. But let me say this. When Dana first showed me the imagery, I was like, okay, there's a specific request for exactly that. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, nothing else? Like, we got to do exactly like what they asked for? Like, he's like, yeah. And I'm like, but then I researched and I took a look at some more things and I thought about some things. And you know, I'm always pressing Dana to say, are they sure they don't want like a whole bunch of blocks of teal or turquoise bursting from the bottom of the sign and we can do all this other sort of stuff? And he's like, no, man, I think we want to keep it pretty much like that as it stands, because that is impactful enough. It's that message is strong enough. And in that moment of me thinking about all that and then me realizing the undertaking we were getting involved with and then thinking about the timing of what's going on historically right now with cases and stuff, it helped me grow. That's what I was referring to earlier when I said little bits of progress. So the fact that someone like me who normally might pass something off to Dana and be like, dude, if I can't do what I want, I don't want to be involved. I'm progressing, and that is already like another foot in the step in the right direction of getting to what you're talking about, which is you do a mural first. Now what's after the mural? What's the action? That sort of thing, right? Well, people have to have the right mindset. Just in the moment of accepting the gig or whatever, like my mindset is turning. That's a little bit of progress that's changing and happening right there. You know what I'm saying? You got to start somewhere type thing. You know what I mean? So who knows? I don't know what that looks like. But I'm here to have the conversation. I guess that's my point. Yeah. You know, and you're here to say what you had to say, so that's dope. Because you didn't have to be.
How did you learn, or how did you know you wanted to do that sort of art?
I used to just see it on trips. I lived in Indianapolis. It's close to Chicago. You can take a day trip to Chicago and come back that same day on a weekend, right? And you would just see the trains ride by, and I just thought it was crazy that there were all these different colors. And when I later learned that it was people selecting names and the names standing for who they were, that meant something to me, because in the graffiti world, there's a lot of instances where a name that you see up is legendary. And there are all these different rumors about what that name, like who that kid is. It's a little 12-year-old white kid, or no, that dude, he's a 35-year-old Latino dad, you know, with 7 kids. You never know, and then you meet the kid, and it's the most unassuming, gentle, nice kid who wouldn't hurt a fly, but you meet him under the bridge, you stumble upon him at 2 a.m., you see him writing, and you're like, hey, you're such and such? It's like, yeah, and now there's a different bond between you, and there's a different understanding of what a person could be. So it's kind of ill to me that people can take a word or select a word or create a name, create an identity, and while they may be the kid that gets bullied and picked on, they may be a master in the craft of that thing that takes place at nighttime, right? And that's something where it can't be bridled, meaning it can't be controlled, right? And I like things where we have the creative freedom to like break out of control in a healthy way. So that's probably what drew me to it.
Margie, one more question?
We save the best for last.
Well, man.
So, what is art?
Damn, the hardest question out of the whole. You gotta take this.
No, that's all
How
you.
many cans of paint are you gonna take?
That's easier.
I have about 125 in the car right now, so quite a bit. You can grab the other question.
You know what, man? It's tough for me to answer it because art can be so much that for me to just spit something out to you, I may be leaving out something. You know what I mean? So art can be anything you want it to be, but you have to push it to that. I don't really believe in this whole thing of you just throw some up, you turn around and it's like boom, that's good enough. No, you have to caress something and mold it and invest in it and try and work on it. Do you mess with Legos? You play with Legos? Sometimes? Well, you understand the idea of like, to get the fun out of the Lego, you can't just have one out there on the floor, right? You gotta take other Legos and put them together and push and try things and look at the different combinations of colors and height and all that sort of stuff, right? You have to work with the thing. So I think art can be anything you want it to be as long as you make it so. Don't just say it so, you gotta make it so.
Awesome.
All right, good.
Yeah, thank you both so much. This has been great. It's been great to see your passion and hear about your passion. You have so much knowledge to share, and we can't wait to see the finished mural, the finished product. So, and hopefully it will continue to. I mean, it's not even started yet, and it's sparking curiosity and conversation, and we hope that continues. And thanks for joining us today. Thank you all online too.
That's love. Thank you. Appreciate it.